Hey, everybody, this is David, also known as the Graceful Atheist. We also have with us Chris, also known as Godless Journey, and recently the Atheist Admin, as he goes about solving everyone's technical problems for all atheist projects. Hey,
Thank
Chris,
you.
how you doing?
Not too bad. Definitely keeping busy.
All right, all right. So today we wanted to talk about why we are motivated to produce content. Um, I am acutely aware of the fact that I have not written anything in about 6 months, so this will be uh, a little tongue in cheek for me, but we'll be discussing what it is that motivates us. So, Chris, I'll just bounce it to you to start with. What motivated you to start creating video content on YouTube?
Sure. Well, I first started off with the blog, and that was very much a me centered thing. Like it was me processing my deconversion and trying to figure things out. I started meeting people on there, and then I hopped onto Twitter, and I kind of sort of put the blog on the back burner. Was like interacting with people as opposed to just spouting out my thoughts on my blog. um, and that was nice to kind of make some kind of connection. Um, and then I just kind of found I mean, when I first deconverted, YouTube was kind of my biggest resource. I learned all I went through the atheist experience on there, and then I found all the content creators like Godless Cranium, Godless Engineer, all those guys, and I kind of wanted to be a part of that. I thought that was kind of cool. And the reason that I do it more or less is putting a opposing voice to bad ideas, not just about religion, but pseudoscience and things like that. I haven't got into that part, but it's on my to-do list to get into some of the woo that's out there that people are peddling and people are buying, and kind of providing a dissenting voice.
Yeah. Let me just bounce off that. Don't you find it interesting that, like, you start to have doubts about your own uh, religious beliefs and religious upbringing, and it just keeps expanding and expanding and expanding. So you mentioned just woo as a general category. I'm sure lots of people know what that is, but would you define that a little bit more? And my point is that I think once you start to have a kind of a skeptical attitude in the best sense of that term. That it just keeps getting wider and wider, and it affects more and more areas of your life.
It really does. In this instance, I guess a good example of it would be the other day I had a discussion. It was kind of a branch off of another discussion about the place in religion in modern society, and it kind of went to, well, someone said, I don't think that religion does, but spirituality does, and I asked them to define that. And they went into this story about a doctor who was putting Buddhist monks in an MRI machine to measure their chakra. And,
Right.
and I'm like, okay, so let me grant you that something happened inside the MRI machine
Right.
in these zones. What does that have to do with something that we cannot physically measure and see? Why is that spiritual? Why isn't that something that can be observed and recorded and reproduced?
Right.
So and to kind of out of breath today. To kind of go on top of that, see people like buying essential oils or getting into homeopathy and
Yeah.
things that don't have the evidence-based background to them that people spend lots of money on,
Right.
that they should be using for things that have had experimental treatments, or not experimental treatments necessarily, but there's evidence-based treatments to it and have been shown to actually work, where you take the natural remedy and science has actually isolated exactly what in that natural root, let's say,
Hmm.
the chemical compound, and made that what you take, as opposed to taking the entire root, which has less medicinal effect on it.
Right. Right. Well, I realize we've we took about 30 seconds and we were already off topic. But if you don't mind, can we continue on this for just a second?
Yeah.
I love the movie about Andy Kaufman with Jim Carrey. I think it's called
Man on the Moon.
Yeah, Man on the Moon. That's it. Yeah, and I love one of the last final scenes. Andy Kaufman knows that he's dying. I believe it's cancer, and he goes to a shaman who supposedly has healing powers, and because Andy Kaufman was a master at deception and fooling his audience, he was very conscious of the tricks that people play, right? And so as he's literally laying down on the table and this quote unquote shaman is performing this ritual, and it looks like blood is coming out of him, or some foul bit, he sees the guy palm a bloody rag, and Jim Carrey playing Andy Kaufman just gets this wide grin on his face, like, yeah, I thought so. It just reminds me so much of this experience as well, is that we come awake to the fabrications and the tricks and the misleading nature of various things, specifically in our lives about religion, and then you can't help but see it everywhere else.
Yeah,
in everything. So. Quick story on that. A couple of years ago, I injured a hip muscle. It was crazy. I just landed wrong and just could barely stand for quite some time. But I had the options to go to a physical therapist or, and I'm blanking on the term. Maybe you can help me with this. But there's like a slightly more woo physical therapy kind of thing where it's. And anyway, I wound up, for reasons I can't explain, going down this other path. And I would see this lady a couple of times, and it's basically stretching and that kind of stuff. But I realized as she was asking me to give her feedback, it just I had that Andy Kaufman moment of, oh, this is just bullshit.
Yeah.
She has no idea what she's doing.
Yeah.
Right, sorry.
No. I do that with almost everything now.
Yeah.
I look at everything very skeptically. Anytime someone makes a claim, I'm like, where's your source? I need to see how you got to that conclusion, how you are saying that this is a thing in reality.
Yeah.
I'm horrible at the dead air because
no worries.
This is why my channel never has anything live.
We'll get back to the content creation, but again, what are some of the areas of woo that you are interested in exploring or debunking?
Well, probably my first one would be Reiki. I don't know if you've heard of that. It just seems like such a, I'm not going to touch you, but everything's going to change for you. GM Skeptic actually has a video on his channel where he actually went to a Reiki reading. And it's, going to Reiki reading as a skeptic. And it was a good summary, I think, of how I would view such a thing. He's like, it was a very relaxing environment. It was kind of the question that they ask are a little bit leading to kind of get you in that mindset. So that's probably where I would start. And I definitely want to get into things like I said, homeopathy is another big one. It's I didn't realize what it was until recently. I saw a video on it. It was like, oh, you take this thing that gives you these symptoms and you dilute it. And then you take that dilution and you dilute that till there's like 1 part per 200 billion. And it's like, what's the wait? Oh, Shannon is giving the finger to GM Skeptic. I think there's a thing about that, but
hey, let's just mention we've got a lot of conversation going on in the YouTube channel and on the Discord server. If you're listening or in in the chat. If you're on the Discord server, the link to join us is there. Just hop on in and join us live.
Yes, as I said, this would be very loose as to why we content create.
Right.
So, yeah.
Well, I'll share briefly about why I started my blog, and then we can just jumble through different topics. But I was joking with you on the Discord server yesterday of just, in a word, it's about catharsis, right? Like I started writing just to unscramble my thoughts about what it was that I believed in the past, why and how that changed for me, and what it is I think now. And a lot of it was almost to document, because I've already, now it's only been 3 years now, I've already lost the why did I think this way kind of feeling, right? It's harder and harder for me to keep a hold of that. And so, and part of it was just to document, was my thinking process from beginning to end. And then just from a catharsis point of view of just getting that out and expressing it. So as I meet new people and sometimes I refer them to my blog, I'll point out that, in the beginning, there were some angry blog posts, there's a part of it is just me expressing frustration. And I definitely don't want to fall into that stereotypical, this is what all atheists are like, and they're all angry kind of thing. Mm. But you can see the kind of the trajectory on the blog from, kind of catharsis to some anger to, hey, what do we do now? And how do we build community? And I think that's what continues to drive me to want to write and be a part of the community on Twitter, be a part of this community in Secular Hangouts, is to build something, to create something that is bigger than ourselves, right? That replaces some of the human needs that we were having fulfilled by churches or what have you, right?
Yeah, so I think that's a big one, is the being part of something bigger than ourselves. It's kind of how we evolved as a species, is the doing things that are bigger than we could do by ourselves. That's how we became so dominant.
Right.
So it's kind of built into us at this point.
Definitely.
When you take away you take away religion, you kind of lose that that built-in sense of community, and we're doing something for a greater good. I mean, looking back now, that may not necessarily have been the best way of doing it, but that was how we could connect. I mean, there was a lot of other stuff that went into that as well, but that was definitely a big part of it.
Right. So maybe you said this already, but I'd like to hear the transition. So you talked about that you started the blog, and then you started the YouTube videos to kind of reach out a little bit more. How do you find those differences? Like, is either of those media more expressive for you, or you know what I'm trying to get at here? Like, what do you find you're able to express yourself the most with?
Sure. Well, with the videos, it's when I do a response video, it's a little different than when I do just like my own video. When I do my own video, it's essentially a blog post that I just talk through and put funny pictures up against. So that way it's very similar. But when I do a response video, I'm really looking at it's kind of in my mind, a mini debate, and it's not necessarily a debate format because I don't like that format. I'm not really good on my feet. I'm not good at talking to people face to face and having an argument. I get overly emotional, overly excited. So I do response videos as kind of a way in my brain to kind of bridge that gap, so to speak. Mm-hmm. And I want to have those conversations with people in real life and things, but I just don't have the not equipment. Well, I can't think of the word. I just don't have the I can't do it.
Yeah.
And I think making the response videos, it is taking this. It's essentially the same thing, but in a smaller package that I can pre-plan and pre-script and work through that way.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting about the response videos is you get a complete thought out, right? And in a live conversation, you tend to only get to make a tiny bit of your point before things change, right? That conversation moves in a different direction. So you get to complete your entire thought from beginning to end, which is helpful.
Yep. All right. Oops.
Who do you see as your target audience, right? Do you think that it's more atheists, or do you think that there are theists that consume your content as well?
Right now, the only people watching it are other atheists, and so I do kind of I do have one video out that's kind of aimed at that, where I talk about the problems with the problems of evil
Right.
argument, where it's like it's not necessarily a God can't exist because of the problem of evil. That's not necessarily true, because it just might not be the God of the Bible or the Quran or the Torah.
The classical theist.
Right,
God,
right.
yeah.
It might not be the Abrahamic God. It could be some other God. That argument doesn't stand against it. So so I kind of did that one for that reason. I would like to talk to people more that are questioning, that are still religious, that are like, I'm having some doubts. Can I find someone who's talking about this from a different point of view than I'm used to seeing?
Right.
Someone who's taken, I haven't gotten this far yet, but who's taken a William Lane Craig argument and given me the other side of it.
Right.
Because I didn't have that in religion. I didn't want that. I didn't look for that. But when I was questioning, I didn't necessarily see that right away. That's probably partially thanks to YouTube's algorithm, but
speaking of YouTube's algorithm, do you think like that affected the process that you went through? Like, so let me step back and say the YouTube algorithm has been accused of being of leading towards extremism, right? That you start off with maybe a simple question and it leads to more and more extreme, and I'm using extreme here in air quotes, but content. Do you think that had any influence on the way that your deconversion came about?
probably a little bit. At least after I decided that I was done with religion, I was able to find the polar opposite of what I was looking for, or what I was used to. It also helped that I made a new account, but
Right.
but and now I remember this, and there was definitely different stages of what I watched as I was leaving. Like, I watched the Atheist Experience, and that's a little more cerebral than some of the other ones. And then I got to Godless Engineer. I don't know if you've seen him.
I have, yeah.
Yeah. It's a very different style. And
Yeah.
when I first watched it, I was very put off. I was like, this isn't right. People shouldn't talk about God and religions like this. And as I kind of grew out of my religion more and more, I kind of became more comfortable with it. I'm like, okay, this is actually it is cerebral. It's at a different level. It's more like, and this isn't meant to be an insult to GE, because I love him. He's a great guy.
Right.
But GE channel is more like the South Park, whereas the Atheist Experience is more like CNN. And it's just different.
Okay.
It's different ways to make a point.
Yeah, all the Twitter comments can go to Godless Journey.
Yeah. Oh, please no hate. No, I love GE. He's a great guy. I actually manage his Discord server, so
Right.
I love him to
So,
pieces.
hey, I'm going to bounce off that too. So I do want you to just mention that I know you have a Patreon page these days, but you've been asked by a number of different people at atheist projects to help them out with Discord, and you've been helping them out, and I think that's great. I'm going to plug you and just say, hey, go find Godless Journeys Patreon and give them $1 or $2.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of where my role, I think, has kind of evolved to. I do plan on still making content, but my availability to do so is kind of limited at the moment.
Right.
But I do have time to help other people. It takes me 5 or 10 minutes to set up a Discord server, whereas writing a blog post or a script could take me 4 or 5 hours.
Right.
And reading somebody else's, I'm not having to necessarily come up with the ideas. I can just say, hey, who are you trying to reach with this? And give them feedback saying, well, if you're trying to reach Christians, this isn't the way to go about it. Or, hey, this might actually be eye-opening for someone who's questioning.
Right.
Which I find easier to do than to create. And it's not that I don't like creating. I love creating, but I don't have the time.
Understood. Yeah. Well, and I think what's interesting about that is that when we talk about this idea of community, it is not just the people who want to be in front of the camera who are a part of the community, right? Like I think we've said before, we'll declare success for secular Hangouts when we have non-content creators who are participating more often. In that, if you are a behind the scenes kind of person, you're able to do the technical work that adds to the community, right? If you write, or if I know that Forsaking Faith, both Christine and Heather have been doing kind of an artistic poetry part of their podcast. I think that's great, right? Like how much atheist poetry are you aware of, or agnostic poetry? I think that's awesome. That's building a community, right? It's everybody bringing whatever particular talents they have and participating in some way or another.
Yeah, that was definitely my intention. Is I still want to be a part. I still want to give back, and this way I can actually do it and be effective at it.
Absolutely, and that's just a call out to everyone else as well. If you want to participate in the Secular Hangouts community in any way, it doesn't have to be in these live chats, that kind of thing. Just let us know. Then the Discord server is kind of a first point of contact. Obviously, you can find us on Twitter. Just let us know what you're interested in, how you're interested in participating.
Yeah, I know that I'm trying to remember who was involved in it. But there was a group of YouTube atheists that were talking about how to give in the community if you don't want to be out. If you don't want to come out, how you can do it. You can start a blog anonymously, WordPress. Right. You don't have to put any of your information in there.
Right.
And just little things like that. And there's a bunch of us. I'm one of them who use an avatar as their face as opposed to being live on camera.
Right. And I think that's an interesting topic as well. I mean, the first thing that I did was create, a different Gmail account, a different Twitter account, a different Facebook account, so that it wasn't just about branding. It was about, I can be completely honest with no holds barred with this alternative account, right? And I think we've talked about before, kind of the degrees, the levels of being out. And this is one way where you can participate in the community, express yourself, and still have a modicum of privacy.
Yeah, exactly. And that was a big thing, is having that anonymity for me allows me to be more open and genuine and honest with my conversations. And I think that that is something that you don't necessarily get, even if you are being yourself normally. It's still hard to be that level of real and honest because people know you.
Right. Yeah. Well, and I just, I think your personal social media accounts are, I don't know about yours, but mine are just chock full of Christians or conservatives or, people that I'm I disagree with a fair amount. Yeah. And so I know that if I need to vent, that that's not going to be good for me or them, right? And so doing that on an alternative account allows me to do that without having to go through those mental gymnastics of, is this okay to say? Is this going to hurt somebody's feelings? That kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, pretty much the only people I have on Facebook are family.
Yeah.
And I don't follow myself on Facebook or Twitter.
Right.
I think maybe Instagram, but I don't even use that, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But yeah, just as an FYI, kind of an aside, if you are watching this on YouTube and you wish to be part of the chat, you see that nobody is chatting on YouTube. It's because they're all over on the Discord server chatting, because it's awesome over there.
Yeah.
I will put a link in the description for it when we get done here. I kind of set this up in a quickie way. Usually I have all of our contact information at the bottom of the description, and but yeah, that was a complete derailment of our conversation. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no worries. On Discord server, I see a couple people. Dr. Obvious is saying they have a channel under their own name as well. So some people I think are going to have no problem at all of just this is me and I'm 100% out, and that's not a problem. I think it's important to recognize that you can have these degrees of being out, right? Like, so that people who are early or right at the beginning of a deconversion process can still participate in the community before they're ready to share, the "Hi, I'm an atheist" Facebook post with the entire world, that kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And there are people who can't, for many reasons, that can't just be like, "Hey, I'm an atheist."
Yeah.
And just so many reasons. I mean, parts of the world that'll get you killed.
Yeah. Well, that's true. That's exactly right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, let's ask this then. So we've talked about the blog, we've talked about YouTube. Are there any other areas of content creation that are out there that you haven't done yet that you're interested in doing?
I'm dabbling into some longer writing. There's two things that I have, and they're completely unrelated, so I can't really do them at the same time. But I am working on a what I hope to someday be a novel, which is different. And I'm writing, and I used to write a lot of like short stories when I was in the faith, and they were very different than what this has started out to be already.
Right.
Just for tone reasons and language and just themes, it's very different than I would have ever written as a Christian.
Right.
And on the flip side of that, I'm also looking into doing some more scientific based writings and research, and kind of doing something more definitely deeper than I've ever done on any blog post or YouTube video, where I'm citing sources and everything else like that.
Right.
So those are kind of the bigger projects I have kind of in the back burner, but
absolutely. I wish that I had the time to do a podcast. I would love to have a weekly drop of a podcast. I think that'd be an interesting medium to work with, just because I consume so many podcasts. I love a lot of the atheist and deconversion podcasts that are out there that were really helpful for me. So it sounds like for you, YouTube was the first major point of contact. For me, it was podcasts.
Yep.
Well, books and podcasts. And
I hate to break it to you, but you're doing it right now.
That's true.
Much what this is.
That's my point. Yeah. See, so for example, like I'd like to be off camera. I should probably just put up the avatar, but then it would just be two avatars talking to each other, which seems really good to me. Take my old ugly face off the screen, but yes, I have no problems talking. So, but I think this has been a great outlet. I don't know for you, but for me to be able to just talk through things, and it's that shared experience, right? That we've gone through very similar things that is always exciting to hear. You know, you can hear that just in somebody's tone of voice. Oh, they really understand where I'm coming from, what I've been through, that kind of thing. So
yeah. Shannon Q is telling you better be listening to the Heathen Hour podcast, which is at Saturdays on Godless Cranium's YouTube channel, but they actually are syndicating through like iTunes and I think Stitcher.
nice. I will check that out. Okay.
But yeah, they've always got great guests on that show.
Fantastic. Yeah, definitely. Please send your recommendations. We'll give a shout out on air as well. So, so you actually, let's do that for a second. Let's mention some of the YouTube channels that were influential for you, and I'll try to think of some of the podcasts that were important to me.
First Shannon says, "Goddamn right." Yeah, for me, like I said, the first thing I found was the Atheist Experience, and I kind of binged that one pretty quickly. At least I think the last 5 years of the show in about a couple months span. And from there, YouTube kind of realized that I wasn't really watching Christian stuff anymore, and they recommended Godless Cranium, which I kind of watched next, and I kind of went through his catalog, and that was great. And then I found some shows like Paulogia, Viced Rhino, Godless Engineer, and then I started, once I started getting kind of more involved in the Twitter community, I found a lot of smaller channels that were great. Secular, he's actually been on live with us once before.
Yeah.
Listen, Shannon, I can't talk bad about everyone. Sorry. And I'm going to talk about Drew again, GM Skeptic. And then I found, like, Godless Iowan. He's a great guy. I was blog buddies with him, and then he branched off into YouTube, and he's been very much promoting the atheist community as much as he can.
Right.
With his stuff, and his wife, or soon-to-be wife, Mrs. Snarky, she's been on the Women of Deconversion here on Secular Hangouts, and she has a couple of videos as well. But the community that I have, I mean, I follow like over 150 YouTube channels now.
Right.
I can't name them all. I want to, but
exactly.
I want to.
There's more content than there's time to consume.
Exactly. And I when I first started, I used to religiously watch all the new stuff that came out. Yeah. Anybody who put out new videos, I was able to watch it that day. And as the list grew and gotten bigger, it's like, okay, I can't watch everything anymore. And I love the live streams when I can catch them live, but I can't watch them after the fact because they're like 2-3 hours long.
Right.
and as much as I love that content, I can't make it fit anymore. But
right.
Anyway, that's me. What about you?
I hear you. So like the Life After God podcast was a big one for me. So Ryan Bell started that probably 2 months after my deconversion. So that was like real early. And it was interesting to watch that project expand. It's kind of slowed down at this point, but so that was real influential on me. I've mentioned before, Bart Campolo's Humanize Me. It's really interesting, partially because Bart Campolo's dad is Tony Campolo, who's a very famous evangelical evangelist, and it's just fascinating to me that Bart is an atheist and a humanist, and continuing kind of the social gospel, if you will, the outreach to people, and so I found that really fascinating. Voices of Deconversion, Steve Hilliker, great podcast. I was on that one once. I know that the Forsaking Faith gals were just on that as well, so go check that out. Heather and Christine both. Let me think. Man, there's been so many that I'm blanking now. Yeah, but I think for me, again, podcasts, there's something very, very intimate about, having somebody, the earbuds in your ear and listening to people talk. That's quite profound. So I like that as a medium. I think it's pretty cool.
Awesome. Very cool.
Well, were there any other topics you wanted to bring up for today's stream?
I don't think so. Anyone in the Discord have something they want us to talk about? Because I'm out of ideas. Shannon Q's typing. Oh, she's talking to Shane. She's not even talking to us.
All right.
Anyway, well, I think that we'll do it for today. I will put all of our contact stuff at the bottom, so be sure to check that out. Anything you want to talk about?
I think that's it. We just reiterate that we're trying to build a bit of a community here, and so in any way that you want to participate, please join us. The quickest way to do that is either on Twitter at Graceful Atheist or at Godless Journey, and the at Secular Hangouts actually Twitter account has also the Discord server link if you're interested in that kind of a chat environment where you can meet a bunch of people that are, many of whom are also content creators, atheist content creators. And again, we're just trying to facilitate some community building. And so please join us.
Yes. Final question before we leave. Shannon wants to know how much yellow weighs. And I think that's a call out to whether or not colors actually exist. But that's a whole different topic. Yeah, that's a whole different philosophical, deeper talk. But yeah, all right. It was great talking.
All right, man. We will talk to you later.
All right. Bye-bye.